if you will, the relentless, suffocating heat of a midday sun. There is absolutely no shade, no shelter anywhere. The ground beneath your feet isn't just earth. It's a shifting, burning red sand that seems to literally swallow the horizon itself. Every single breath you draw is a dry, scorching wind that just pulls the moisture straight out from the very bottom of your lungs. The vastness of this desert stretches out in every possible direction, distorting the air into these massive, shimmering heat waves. And in the background, you hear nothing but the heavy drag of exhausted, blistered feet shuffling through the dust. Millions of feet. An entire nation on the move, entirely surrounded by an endless ocean of arid rock and sand. Welcome to today's Explainer. We are going to step directly into the most profound soul laboratory ever recorded, a grueling, incredibly cinematic trial of human endurance and absolute spiritual transformation.
The scripture records these haunting words, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted." You have to hear the morbid exhaustion in those words. It isn't just a casual complaint, it's a breathless, desperate gasp from the throats of a starving people. Think about the sheer psychological whiplash here. Just days ago, they had witnessed the sea split wide open. They walked through towering walls of water. They literally watched their oppressors vanish beneath the crashing waves. And yet, here they are, stripped entirely bare in the blinding light of the wilderness, and the euphoria of that deliverance has just completely evaporated. The psychological terror of freedom has set in. They are suddenly staring into an absolute abyss of uncertainty. And in that terrifying void, the Bible shows them actually longing for the very chains that bound them, simply because, well, those chains came with the safety of a full stomach.
Let's pause for a second and really zoom in on the sheer physiological reality of this exact moment. Feel that dry wind against your face. Your lips are severely cracked, literally splitting open under the relentless ultraviolet glare of the sun. Every single time you try to speak or even just swallow, the skin tears a fraction more. You taste the sharp metallic tang of your own blood resting on blistered skin. The scripture says they journeyed for 3 agonizing days into the desert of Shur without finding a single drop of water. 3 days. At that point, the human body begins to actively shut down. Your muscles cramp violently. Your mind starts to play tricks on you, hallucinating. You're carrying children who have stopped crying because their bodies simply no longer have the moisture required to produce tears. And this vast, sun-scorched wasteland, it offers zero sympathy, only a heavy, suffocating silence.
Section 1. The Bitter Waters of Mara. A rapid descent into despair.
So after 72 hours of this agonizing, dust-choked walking, a sudden ripple of frantic energy surges through the camp. Up ahead, shimmering in the merciless heat, is an oasis: water. The mere sight of it sends a massive shockwave of primal adrenaline straight through the exhausted crowd. I want you to watch this unfold in slow motion. Picture the frantic, stumbling sprint, men, women, animals dropping violently to their bruised knees right at the water's edge. Trembling, dirt-caked hands plunge deep into the spring, frantically cupping the liquid and throwing it toward their desperate mouths. The water touches the tongue. The throat opens up to finally receive life. And then, a violent, agonizing rejection. The throat seizes up. The stomach recoils instantly. They spit the liquid out onto the thirsty earth, coughing, gagging, the harsh sting of alkaline poison violently burning their esophagus. The scripture tells us they could not drink the water, for it was bitter, hence the name, Mara, literally meaning bitter. The sheer cruelty of this moment, going from the euphoric salvation of finding water to the immediate toxic betrayal of poison, it is an absolute masterclass in psychological tension. The despair is total.
The panicked masses turn on their leader, Moses. Their voices are raw, filled with terror. "What are we to drink?" they demand. And the Bible records Moses doing the only thing left to do when faced with the utterly impossible. He cries out to the Lord. And right here, we see the very first divine law of survival established. The Lord points out a piece of wood, a tree. Moses lifts it, his exhausted muscles straining, and he hurls it into the poisoned depths. Watch that heavy wood hit the surface. Watch the dark ripples spreading outward. Beneath the surface, an invisible, miraculous alchemy occurs. The agonizing poison is completely neutralized. The bitter waters instantly become sweet, cool, and life-giving. The scripture says that right there, the Lord established a decree and a law for them. He tested them, promising that unwavering obedience would bring an ultimate divine healing.
Section 2. Hunger for Egyptian Chains. Reaching the breaking point.
We leave the temporary rest of the oasis, stepping into the second month of their journey, right into the desolate wilderness of sin. And now the provisions they carried out of Egypt are completely gone. Starvation sets in. It's a hollow, gnawing ache in the gut that absolutely never sleeps. And as the physical body wastes away, it strips away all human dignity with it. In the terrifying vacuum of their empty stomachs, a dark, diseased nostalgia begins to breed. The scripture shows a profound, terrifying paradox of human nature right here. On one side, we have the fullness of slavery. They look back at Egypt and they only see the pots of meat and the bread they ate to the full. They are deliberately, desperately editing out the brutal sting of the taskmaster's whip, the crushing weight of the bricks, the murder of their own children. And on the other side, we see the stark reality of the hunger of freedom. Freedom, out here in the wilderness, offers absolutely no guaranteed meals. It offers intense thirst, freezing nights, and it demands an absolute, unwavering trust in an invisible God. The entire congregation of Israel actively turns against Moses and Aaron. They are literally begging for the chains of Egypt, accusing their deliverers of bringing them into this desert just to kill the whole assembly with hunger. They fundamentally prefer the certainty of surviving as a slave over the terrifying responsibility of living as a free person.
Section 3. Flesh beneath the glory. The paradox of provision. So the bitter murmuring of these starved millions echoes across the barren rocks, rising straight up to the heavens. And the heavens respond. Moses and Aaron tell the people to look out toward the desert, and as they turn their hollow, sunken eyes outward, a brilliant, absolutely terrifying luminescence breaks right through the oppressive sky. The glory of the Lord appears in the cloud. It is a visceral, unmistakable presence. The Lord has heard their grumbling, and he is about to deliver a literal, awe-inspiring answer to their cries for flesh. The scripture says that evening, quail came up and covered the camp. Picture the horizon. The sun is beginning to dip low, casting these massive, long, blood-red shadows across the tents. A low rumble begins to vibrate through the very ground beneath their feet. The sky in the distance darkens, but not with storm clouds. It's a living, moving mass. I want you to see the micro-narrative here. It is a chaotic, swirling storm of feathers and beaks. The deafening flutter of literally millions of wings completely blots out the sunset. The birds descend in a frantic, overwhelming wave, crashing into the tents, covering the sand, filling the air with the raw, pungent smell of living flesh. The Israelites are terrified, ducking beneath the sheer weight of the flock. It is an overwhelming, almost aggressive abundance of meat, a direct, intensely physical rebuttal to their diseased fantasy of the Egyptian meat pots. Section 4. The Frost of Daily Trust, Stepping into a Divine Soul Laboratory. The chaotic storm of the quails passes, and it gives way to the eerie, breathless stillness of the deep desert night. As the dawn approaches, a thick, heavy dew settles over the entire camp, glistening in the pale morning light. But you see, this isn't just a change in weather. This morning marks the beginning of an unprecedented daily ritual meant to systematically dismantle and permanently break their entrenched slave mentality. The Bible records that when the dew evaporated, a fine, flake-like substance, as fine as frost on the ground, remained on the surface of the wilderness. The people looked down, utterly bewildered, asking one another, "What is it?" which in their language is manna. Let's slowly examine this incredibly mysterious provision. The text describes it closely. It was like coriander seed, white in color. Imagine picking up a single delicate flake. It's fragile, almost crystallizing upon your fingertips. You place it on your tongue. After weeks of alkaline water and dry dust, your mouth just explodes with a delicate, profound sweetness. The scripture says it tasted like wafers made with honey. A tender, almost miraculous sweetness scattered right across the brutal, unforgiving desert floor. And this brilliantly illustrates the divine rhythm of trust. According to the scripture, this wasn't a free-for-all. There was a rigid, unyielding set of laws designed specifically to shatter human greed and the very instinct to hoard. For the first 5 days, every single person is commanded to gather exactly 1 omer, just enough for that specific day according to their eating capacity. No more, no less. The biblical account details an incredible phenomenon. He who gathered much had nothing over, and he who gathered little had no lack. But there is a crucial, non-negotiable command: let no one leave any of it until morning. Then, on the 6th day, the entire pattern shifts. They are to gather twice as much and prepare it, because the 7th day is a holy Sabbath. On that 7th day, the skies will be completely closed. Absolutely nothing will fall.
But you know, a slave's mind is absolutely gripped by the terror of tomorrow. The primal urge to stockpile to secure their own salvation against the sheer unpredictability of the desert is overwhelming. The Bible records that some of them paid no attention to Moses. Under the dark cover of night, trembling hands hid extra portions deep in the dark corners of their tents. But watch what happens as the desert sun rises and the temperature begins to climb. That hoarded manna, meant to be a sweet wafer of life, begins to violently melt and putrefy. A sickly sweet, incredibly putrid stench fills the air of the camp. You peel back the cloth, hiding the stolen provision, and you recoil in visceral disgust. The beautiful white frost has turned into a dark, gelatinous mass. The scripture tells us it bred worms and stank. It is an immediate, inescapable physical consequence for their total lack of spiritual faith.
Section 5. The Silence of the Sabbath. The Ultimate Test. We now enter the 3rd act of this extraordinary trial. The 6th day passes. The double portion has been gathered, and miraculously, the scripture reveals that it did not stink, nor were there any worms in it. Now, the dawn of the 7th day breaks, bringing what is arguably the absolute most agonizing challenge yet for a nation of former slaves: the divine command to stop, to cease all striving, to do absolutely nothing. You have to understand, for a slave born under the whip in Egypt, stopping work means only one thing: death. Your entire existence, your very right to draw breath, has been intrinsically tied to your physical labor, your output, your ability to gather and build. So commanding them to rest on the 7th day initiates a grueling psychological war against their deepest, most entrenched survival instincts. Picture the muscle memory of a captive. The sun is up. The body instinctively twitches. It wants to scour the earth. It wants to search the horizon for sustenance. Their hands are literally shaking because they are empty. To sit idle in a barren wasteland, trusting that yesterday's bread will sustain today's gnawing hunger, requires a monumental, almost impossible leap of faith. The agonizing terror of idle hands is the truest test of whether they are still slaves in their minds or free people, trusting in a divine provider. 0. That is exactly what falls from the sky on the 7th day: an absolute, deafening void of provision. And yet, the slave mentality proves incredibly stubborn. Even with a direct command, even with the explicit warning, the scripture says some of the people still wander out into the barren desert floor on the 7th day, their eyes frantically scanning the dust, searching for something, anything to gather, and they find nothing. Just linger on that heavy, oppressive silence of the empty desert for a moment. It is in this exact void that a profound, piercing divine question is aimed directly at Moses, but meant for every single soul wandering that camp. How long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions?
Section 6. The Eternal Golden Pot, a 40-year epic.
We really need to shift our perspective now. Let's pull the camera back from the immediate blinding dust, the frantic gathering, the intense daily cycle of the desert, and let's look at the timeless, sweeping scale of history. This trial in the wilderness wasn't meant to be some fleeting lesson quickly forgotten. It was destined to become a permanent, sacred monument to human reliance and divine faithfulness. The scripture records Moses giving a profound directive to Aaron. "Take a jar," he says, "and put an omer of manna in it." Watch as Aaron takes a single, heavy golden vessel. Listen to the soft, delicate rustle as he pours the pure, crystallized, unrotting frost directly into the gold. He seals it. He walks into the deepest, darkest, most sacred quiet of the holy space, placing this golden jar before the testimony, right before the Ark of the Covenant itself. It sits there, in the pitch black.
A silent, eternal witness. A physical capsule preserving the exact measurement of a single day's trust, locked away for all future generations to deeply understand exactly what it takes to survive the wilderness. Just look at the epic breadth of this journey. 3 days brought them to the bitter waters. 1 month brought them to the sheer breaking point of starvation. But the staggering reality the Bible records is that the Israelites ate manna for 40 years. They consumed this bread of trust, this miraculous frost, every single day for 4 arduous decades. An entire generation lived, walked, fought, and died, consuming absolutely nothing but the impossible provision of the sky until they finally reached the borders of Canaan, the Promised Land. A 40-year soul laboratory required to burn away the chains of Egypt and forge a people truly capable of living in freedom. So, I ask you, as we look out across the vast, silent expanse of this historical desert, if you found yourself starving in the wasteland, completely stripped of all your comforts, your daily guarantees, and your perceived control, would you have the courage to trust the empty sky for tomorrow? Or would you hoard the manna,